For those of you who are based in Europe in Geneva, my name is Jovan Kurbalija. I'm director of DiploFoundation, and DiploFoundation will be hosting Geneva Internet Platform, which you can see on the slide. It's great to welcome you to our first Geneva briefing on Internet governance, and it will be a monthly event, which we will host every first Tuesday month between 1 and 2 o'clock. Now let me just give you a few background information. Over the last few weeks, we have been hearing many questions from Geneva-based diplomats, from our colleagues on Internet governance. What is going on? What about Car Built initiative, which was announced in Davos? What about ICANN's panel? What about Sao Paulo meeting on Internet governance? And you have probably noted mushrooming events trying more or less to answer the question how the Internet should be governed in the forthcoming period. Therefore, what we decided to do is to organize monthly briefings in order to summarize developments during the previous month, in this case, what has happened in January, and announce and provide mapping for the forthcoming events in February. They should be mainly customized for the need of diplomats who are following the digital diplomacy and IG developments in Geneva. Therefore, it will be very factual, following the main processes during the previous month, indicating the forthcoming events. Besides this factual element, we will try to zoom out and to put those developments into the broader context, geopolitical, geostrategic context. Therefore, the purpose of the briefing, the main purpose, is to serve as some sort of mapping exercise or a way to organize different events and developments in Internet governance. Vlada, could we have the next slide? The first event, as you can see, is online, but as of the 4th of March, we will host in situ briefing at our new premises of Geneva Internet Platform at the building of the World Meteorological Organization, and we'll have in parallel two events. We'll have the online event broadcasted as this one, and in situ event. And we will serve some sandwiches, and there will be an occasion once a month for the diplomats and officials who are following digital politics to get together and discuss Internet governance issues and concrete policy developments. Now I would like to invite Vlada Radunović. Vlada is in charge of Diplo's IG activities, and Vlada he is also part of the Internet Governance Forum governing body, and he is a member of steering committee of OneNet, one of the initiatives of civil society for the preparation for Sao Paulo meeting. Vlada, together with our special guest today, Marilia from the Brazilian FGV Foundation, will provide you with a summary of January and February events. Vlada, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jovan. Welcome again to all of you that joined us for the webinar. Jovan already mentioned in the introduction of myself a couple of abbreviations which might be confusing when it comes to digital policies and the bodies that I'm involved in, and there are other fora that Jovan is involved in, and Marilia, and so on, and all of them have different acronyms. I hope you will hear me well. So what we are going to try to do today is to go through a set of events that happened in January and probably try to envisage what is going to happen in February when it comes to Internet governance. But before that, let's try to briefly, as this is the first in the round of webinars from Geneva, let's try to firstly, in brief, map what are the existing fora when it comes to Internet governance. So, because I suspect that some of you might be new to some extent to the Internet governance, the others that are not will definitely recognize some familiar logos on this slide. Now, we all know about the World Summit on Information Society, which basically had its first two phases in 2003 and 2005. and that was in a way a stepping stone for the future developments in field of digital policies. The Tunis agenda, which was a result of the second meeting in 2005, was the one to set, in a way, three different tracks, follow-up tracks. One is the continuation of the WSIS action lines, which, so to speak, are mostly linked to a wider scope of development and information society, including culture, education, development, and are feeding into Millennium Development Goals. The action lines are guided or further developed by the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, which is based in Geneva. The second track was the setting up of the Internet Governance Forum as an international multi-stakeholder forum, non-decision-making, non-binding, where simply different stakeholders from all the countries could gather once a year and open up specific Internet governance questions and hopefully be able to get some of the messages out of the IGF so that they can use them for their decision-making or policy-making on the national level or also on a global level. The third track that Tunis agenda set up was the discussion on enhanced cooperation, which was then just 2 years ago initiated by the CSTD, the Commission for Science, Technology and Development under the UN ECOSOC. The CSTD started a working group on enhanced cooperation, which aims at, in a way, explaining what should be the role and the model of governments in this increasingly complex internet governance setting, where it is clear that because of the multidisciplinary feature and multi-stakeholder involvement or the roles of different stakeholders, it's not simply a governmental kind of the forum. So these are the three main tracks that we are trying to follow regularly, which is again the WSIS plus 10 process, 10 years of the WSIS, the IGF Internet Governance Forum, and the CSTD working group on enhanced cooperation. But it would be easy if it was only about that. Besides that, we have the regular ITU meetings, which, as it is the agency of the UN, which deals with telecommunications, increasingly goes into the area of internet and digital communications because of telecommunications change. And there is an overlap between the ITU work in the sense of the internet governance to some extent, to a wider understanding. And for instance, the ICANN work, and the ICANN is the non-for-profit corporation which is based in UN, which manages the domain name system, all the internet addresses and numbers without which the internet wouldn't work. But of course, they don't do just the technical part of the management. It wouldn't be possible. They do a lot of the policy related to domain names and distribution of IP addresses and so on. ICANN has its own meetings 4 times a year, and it is really important also to follow what happens on ICANN meetings around the world. But going into or trying to extend and explain or find a new model for global internet governance and trying to define the roles of different stakeholders, ICANN also pushed recently for its own strategic panel, which is called a high-level panel on global internet cooperation and governance mechanisms. I have to read it because it's quite complex. They had a first meeting in London in December. It is chaired by the Estonian president, and there are a number of VIPs in a way on this panel, including Vint Cerf, one of the fathers of the internet. And their goal is to try to come up with a report, expert report, which would channel the discussions on what could be the global working mechanisms, or what are the desirable properties of some future internet governance mechanisms. Then we have the Net Mundial, as it is called now, the so-called Sao Paulo meeting. Sao Paulo meeting came directly as a result of the NSA and PRISM case, but was initiated by the CEO of ICANN and the President of Brazil, Dilma Rousseff. The idea of the Net Mundial meeting, which is taking place in end of April in Sao Paulo, is to focus first on the principles, internet governance principles, and second, to some extent again, on the ecosystem and the roles of different players, especially government. Besides this meeting in Sao Paulo, we then have OneNet. Jovan mentioned I'm a member of the steering committee also of OneNet. And OneNet is still a big question what it's supposed to be. There are a lot of disagreements about what OneNet should be. Initially, some people think that it was initiated basically by the ISTAR organizations, ICANN, ISOC, and others that are dealing with technical aspects to some extent of policy. In a way, a community discussion or a community platform which was supposed to help the Brazil meeting. Later on, it appeared, or discussion went a different way, that OneNet should in fact be an online facilitation platform which would enable different stakeholders, but specifically the community, technical community, civil society, academia, and why not also government, throughout the year to discuss internet governance challenges and hopefully feed from different events like IGF, like ITU events, like ICANN, like Brazil meeting into its own discussions, and then feed back to these processes with some kind of maybe conclusions about the digital policy recommendations and stuff. Besides that, we have recently initiated Global Commission on Internet Governance. It was announced at the World Economic Forum just end of January, led by Chatham House and the CIGI, where the chair of this commission will be Carl Bildt, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sweden. As far as we know for the moment, the commission aims at focusing on specifically on freedoms online and the surveillance case, but likely not only on that. Likely there will be an overlap in discussions about internet principles and human rights online and so on, and probably going to some extent into an overlap with what's going to happen in Brazil, OneNet, high-level ICANN panel, Internet Governance Forum, and so on. You can see the big overlap. Then we have Freedom Online Coalition, which was started a couple of years ago in the Netherlands. It is basically the Freedom Online Conference. The coalition is basically a coalition of, I think, 20-something, 21 or so countries which have committed to fighting for freedoms online, human rights online. And there is an annual event. This year it happens, it takes place in April in Estonia. It focuses, as it says, mostly on freedoms and human rights. And we have the JIPO, which is the platform initiated by European Commission with a number of international partners, one of which is Diplo as well. Envisaged, but still not rolled out, envisaged as an online platform which should try to aggregate different discussions, different even research papers, experiences, and so on, and in a way be of an assistance to all the other processes and also researchers to be able to communicate with others and take the data that might be interesting for them and the information may be interesting to them from a single point basically online, guided by the European Commission. And then last but not least is recently initiated Geneva Internet Platform, which Jovan mentioned at the beginning. It aims at, in a way, helping all those that are very interested in internet governance, and I frankly see very few people that are not interested now in that, and more developing countries and especially missions of developing countries are also interested in internet governance. So Geneva Internet Platform basically will try to assist all of them that are interested but do not have time and energy and even to some extent skills to summarize all this variety of events that are taking place now. So we have this kind of a spaghetti tangle that was coined. The term was coined, I think, by our colleague Samantha in an excellent blog that was linked on our website, well, we have overlap of a number of initiatives taking place at the same time. The question is how we can untangle them without making knots, or at least not that many knots that might confuse the whole thing and even prevent us from coming to some tangible outcomes of the whole set of internet governance processes and digital policy platforms. As I wrote in a blog that was suggested as a kind of background reading to this webinar, it does not necessarily have to be it is confusing, but it does not necessarily have to lead to a lot of knots, because as I mentioned, there is a lot of overlap between these initiatives, but there is also a lot of specific focuses of each of the initiatives. So a good synchronization is really indispensable. And what does it mean for all of you that would like maybe to follow the internet governance process in future? It simply means trying to get the bits and pieces of what's happening in each of these processes and some new ones that might emerge, and then deciding on your own when, where, and about what you want to get involved with at a certain point. The goal of these briefings is exactly that, to provide you with a monthly summary of what's happening and where you might find your place in the next month and in the forthcoming year. I'm moving from this spaghetti panel now to what happened in January. And of course, feel free to pose questions after we go through this kind of a summary. We will get back to your questions and try to respond to as many as possible. January is usually a boring month when it comes to most of political developments and internet as well, but it was not that boring in the previous weeks. We had the net neutrality controversy in US, where the US Appeals Court decided that the Federal Communications Commission, which previously stood to protect neutrality, meaning protect the open internet and that all the packages on the internet should be distributed in the equal way without any discrimination. The US Appeal Court said that FCC did not have rights to do that. In a nutshell, the US Appeal Court did not say that net neutrality is bad, but the court said that the FCC as a particular body did not have authority to bring such a decision. So in a way, it might not tilt the whole positions or discussion on net neutrality too much. We heard a couple of big internet providers, the US internet providers, mentioning kind of a victory in the sense of net neutrality, but it's not really like that even in US, and FCC has a number of other ways to deal with net neutrality. But the effects on the Europe and the developing countries is interesting. On one hand, Europe seems to have found its own way when it comes to net neutrality, and you could see, well, the Commission is to some extent reserved. Council of Europe is focusing a lot on human rights aspects of net neutrality, not on technical, and more and more countries in Europe find a way out to protect net neutrality through the legislation. Now, what's going to happen with developing countries? That's a good question, because if net neutrality is endangered on a US level, these big corporations like Verizon, AT&T, and so on, which are the providers of the internet, they also provide a backbone to developing countries. So whatever they do on the US ground might impact the traffic on developing countries as well. The second big thing was the Obama speech related to surveillance. On one hand, that was at least my impression, I don't know if you listen to it, he started with justifying the NSA steps, but then he turned into, okay, the reforms of the NSA and the future, but then he also focused a lot on cyber attacks and cybersecurity as kind of a risk while surveillance is necessary. And this kind of cyber attacks mentioning has become more and more prominent, especially when we have someone like the President of the US mentioning it in the formal speech, which might increase the militarization and the tensions when it comes to cyber arms and cyber armament and proliferation of cyber arms. So this is probably going to be an interesting topic in the next month. The World Economic Forum, as usual, brings new initiatives and sets some topics on the high level of diplomatic agenda. This time it was internet governance, and we've heard that the two initiatives, the new commission with Kurbalija leading it, and the ICANS panel, high-level panel, have been in a way prominent at the World Economic Forum. OneNet, Jovan mentioned it, I mentioned it afterwards. It had a final start. We now have a steering committee, which is a multi-stakeholder one, consisting of representatives of civil society, technical community, corporate sector, governments are also supposed to be there. And it is currently focused mostly on how to build up online discussions which are structured, and how to help the NetMundial meeting in Brazil. Probably from February on, it will turn more to thematic areas. NetMundial had a hectic start because it's supposed to take place in April. There were big expectations of it. For the moment, or in January, the main committees have been built around NetMundial. I will invite a little bit later on Marilia to maybe give us a bit of an update on what's happening with NetMundial when it comes to the future steps. Going into February, or what we can expect, or what the agenda in February brings, we have the Internet Governance Forum Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group meeting. Mark is mandated to prepare the program of the annual IGF, which is taking place in Istanbul, 2nd to 5th September this year. But Mark also discusses the improvements of the IGF based on the report which was made by a special working group of the CSTD last year, of the UNESCO CSTD. So if you wish to get involved into what the topics or what the focus of IGF will be this year, but especially if you wish to be involved or contribute to what the Internet Governance Forum will look like and how it should be improved and how it might possibly feed into WSIS plus 10 process, it might be good for you to show up in Geneva 19th to 20th February during the open consultations and MAG meeting and try to raise your voice as well. Second thing is the ICANN high-level panel, which has its second meeting in the US end of February, and is supposed to prepare a draft report on desirable properties of the future architecture. As of end of February, they will submit it formally to NetMundial organizing committee, so the committee organizing the Brazil meeting, as a contribution, but we'll also open it for comments. So from 1st of March, you might follow on the announcements of this draft report and provide your comments if you think this is something that might be relevant. The IT open consultations are taking place in February, also mid-February, where basically the preparations for the documents for the event, which is taking place in April, so-called WSIS plus 10 high-level event, is going to happen. So basically, the open consultations are also in Geneva, in ITU premises, and if you are interested to contribute to documents to the WSIS plus 10 high-level event and then WSIS plus 10 ultimately, that's also a good option where you might show up. The CSTD working group on enhanced cooperation has its final meeting end of February. And by the end of February, it's expected that the chair report and recommendations on enhanced cooperation will be finalized. This document is supposed to go to the final CSTD session, the CSTD session in June, and hopefully or probably feed into the WSIS discussions within the UN as well afterwards. Finally, we have a OneNet, which is, as I said, probably going to evolve more into discussions and topics related to Net Mundial topics at first, which is Internet governance principles and the ecosystem and future Internet governance models. We have the GIP as well, Geneva Internet Platform, and Jovan will summarize what's coming at you. At this point, I will stop my monologue and I'll try to bring in Marilia. So Marilia is connecting from Brazil. She is involved in the Net Mundial meeting. Marilia, you might try to briefly summarize what has happened. Where are we with the Net Mundial meeting? What has happened briefly in January? And what can we expect in February? And how, if people here can maybe join or contribute to the preparations. Marilia.
Thank you very much, Vlada, and thank you for the invitation to be here. Well, after the revelations of mass surveillance, President Dilma Rousseff from Brazil had a chance to give a speech at the UN General Assembly that many people found very strong and inspiring. Among the points that she made on that speech, the two main points that she mentioned was the importance of principles for Internet governance and of a coherent institutional framework that would be able to implement them. And this importance attributed to principles is something that is very characteristic, not only of Brazilian foreign policy. You know, we are mostly able to anchor any concrete action in our foreign policy to a high-level principle. It's also characteristic of the way that Brazil has been developing its internal and national Internet regulation, based on the principles that have been developed by CGIDR, based on the principles that are part of the civil rights framework. So I think it was very natural for her to bring these 2 points. And when the CEO of ICANN came to Brazil and spoke to Dilma, they both jointly had the idea to call this meeting that would tackle this as exactly these 2 main points. Principles that could be universally agreed, that would guide Internet development, Internet governance, and regulation of the Internet, and an institutional framework, a more coherent Internet ecosystem model to enforce and regulate these principles, where actors can, in a multi-stakeholder fashion, come together and participate in Internet governance. So we are having this meeting in Brazil. It will take place in April on the 23 and 24. It's the global multi-stakeholder meeting on the future of Internet governance, which is a very long name. So we are calling it the Net Mundial. I think it's very interesting that one of the first things that the organizers decided to do was to come up with 4 committees. One of them is a committee of governments, if they want to get involved and help to bring other governments and know what is happening. So it's a committee for governments to communicate. The second one is a committee on logistics, so everything related to the actual preparation of the meeting. And there are other very interesting 2 committees. One of them is the high-level committee that tries to discuss in a multi-stakeholder way how to bring in actors from the international community and make sure that the meeting is open and finds high levels of participation. So it sets the political tone of the meeting and also invites people to participate. And the final committee is the Executive Multi-Stakeholder Committee. It's the committee that I am part of, representing civil society. I am one of the 4 representatives of civil society in this committee that has the task to discuss the agenda, to set rules for contributions to the meeting, participation in the meeting. So we had our first meeting of this committee last week. It was very interesting because we could discuss the agenda, we discussed opportunities for participation, and I think it was a very good decision that participation in the meeting will be guided by 3 main principles. One of them is openness, the second is flexibility, and the third one is equality. So one decision that was made in this committee is that the meeting is going to be open to all that want to participate. It will be registration-based instead of invitation-based. Of course, the organizers aim to achieve as much as equality among stakeholder participation as possible. So everybody that registered will be able to come. In case that we have some over-registration of a particular stakeholder group, then a selection procedure will be put in place based on criteria that will be discussed with the community to make sure that community is comfortable with that. But we think that it will not be necessary to make any selection process, so we want the meeting to be as open and as inclusive as possible. There is a website which is already operational. People can visit the website, and it's very important to highlight that all authoritative and official information will come from the website. Of course, we always discuss among ourselves, and there are mails that are exchanging mailing lists, but it's very important to keep up to date with the website. The registration for the meeting will go until March 28th. People will have a response about their participation here, and we hope that everybody will be able to come and participate on March 15th. Contributions, substantial contributions for the meeting will be made through the website, and the time for contribution will be open until March 1. And after that, the Secretariat will support the multi-stakeholder executive committee to put together a synthesis paper for easy reference of the participants. Well, to close this, I think that these are the main information that we have on the level of procedurals and participation and so on. I just would like to make a very brief evaluation, if I may. I think that this meeting may be very interesting for us, for all actors as a multi-stakeholder community. First of all, because there are so many interesting initiatives to put together principles for internet governance. And we have made several exercises to cross them and compare them. And it's my understanding, and of other people as well, that maybe we are mature enough to come up with a single document that would help us as a community to move forward on the discussions about internet governance. And it will be very interesting if we do come up with this document, because except from specific spaces such as ICANN that has a very interesting multi-sig model of deliberation, we don't find spaces in the global internet governance regime where actual decisions are made in a multi-stakeholder fashion. And it will be very interesting to prove that we are able to come together as a community and agree on these principles on a multi-stakeholder fashion. I think there will be a proof that we can even maybe one day improve the IGF on the direction of having more concrete and multi-stakeholder outcomes coming from it that can guide the policy development. And the second point, the frameworks, I think that is very important to move forward as well. I think that we have been on a stalemate maybe since WISIS, but understanding is being built in several spaces, such as the CSTD Enhanced Cooperation Committee, and maybe it's possible for us to have now a clearer roadmap and to come up with a model and an system where all stakeholders feel more comfortable to interact and to build policy and principles and discussions in a multi-stakeholder way that is inclusive to everybody. Thank you very much, Vlada.
Thank you, Marilia. It was really helpful. As Jovan said in the chat window, do send the questions to Marilia or about any of the issues that we raised. Before we move to questions and answers, this was a brief summary of what we can expect in February. We'll also try to get some more info from Nigel, from ICANN, who's here about the ICANN plans, besides the high-level panel. What is important, and we mentioned it in the announcement of this webinar, and also the whole set of webinars that are following, is this capability of ours and yours and all of us to zoom in and zoom out and try to get into the details of every initiative and have the overall holistic picture. Well, it might be really challenging for many of you who are not primarily dealing with internet governance to zoom in. That's where we will try to step in and cover that part for you and provide you with information about specific processes in details. And with this kind of a holistic or set of information, we are hoping that you'll be able to do a zoom out more easily then and see what's happening on the general level, and probably decide how and where you can contribute and you wish to contribute to the IG process or any of particular parts of it. Before moving to questions, I will give floor to Jovan, back to Jovan, to wrap up this part of discussion and what your role might be in the future and what our briefings will try to contribute to, and secondly, what Geneva Internet Platform plans in the next weeks, and then we move to questions and answers. Jovan, for yours. Is Jovan still there? Okay.
And now, hi, thank you, Vlada. I'm right now seeing through my window here in my office in Geneva. I will show you that you have the perspective. The building which hosts about 6 embassies of small countries. And I'm wondering how the small country with 3 or 4 diplomats maximum, even in medium-sized country, and we have some colleagues here at the webinar from the medium-sized countries, can follow such complex developments. And it is going to be the major challenge that we have to face. We have the limited bandwidth as the humans. These people in the building across the street, in the small missions, they have to cover humanitarian issues, migration, security, health, and on top of that, such a complex field as internet governance. It is going to be one of the main challenges of general international community and Brazil meeting in particular, to find ways and means to ensure effective participation, not just the nominal participation, but effective participation in internet governance. And this is one of the niche and one of the activities that we will try to cover with the Geneva Internet Platform. Vlada, could you show the next slide, please? While we were on the zoom in, zoom out, the key element is that you heard from Vlada about the events in January, from events of February, excellent summary from Marilia about the preparations for Brazil. But if you want to zoom out, the key message is that we are in the formative phase in global digital politics. Many possibilities are on the table, many parallel discussions are going on, many intellectual efforts are made to conceptualize what's going on. And it's not surprising that you have hundreds of different initiatives in the field of internet governance and research projects. What we will try in Geneva Internet Platform to do in this zooming in, zooming out exercise, with the main focus on helping Geneva-based missions, but also broader community as well. In February, at the end of February, we'll have the presentation of the first 2 books in the platform. One book is interesting, particularly interesting is the book by Richard Hill, one of the protagonists of the negotiation in Dubai, the famous wicket in Dubai, and he wrote his reflections, what happened in Dubai. Therefore, on the 24th, if you're in Geneva, join us at our new premises. We'll be moving to the World Meteorological Organization for discussion on the Richard Hill's book and another books by Swiss authors on the multi-stakeholderism and internet governance. For Geneva-based mission, I would like to announce the start of the first course on internet governance. It will be just-in-time course, which will go for 2 months in preparation for Brazil, consisting on online learning and in situ events every Wednesday at the Geneva Internet Platform premises. The whole studying of the course, learning about internet governance, will be anchored into real life policy processes, preparation for Brazil, IQ events, IGF, and other events that Vlada indicated. It will be a bit of innovation in training in diplomacy, where the teaching about the general academic concept will be embedded with the real life policy processes. We'll have also on the 4th of March our next Geneva briefing, which will be broadcasted like this one from the online, but it will be held physically at our new premises at the World Meteorological Organization. There will be quite a few other events, including, for example, event on Geneva on the question of diplomatic privileges and immunities in the internet era. Therefore, I would like to invite all of you, and in particular Geneva-based diplomats, to stay alert and to follow the developments and announcements coming from Geneva Internet Platform. Vlada, over to you.
Okay, Jovan, Thank you for the summary. I hope the summary was useful. So we're now moving to your questions. I've already mapped a number of them that you posted through a chat window. But before that, we have Nigel Hickson from ICANN Europe here. Nigel, if you want maybe to interact briefly on what the ICANN plans are, and especially focus on February, March, the forthcoming period, how people might get involved into your focus. Nigel.
Yes, thank you. Do I have to push something or something? Hold on. Hello, good morning. Yes, or good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Right. Well, no, I mean, I don't want to say much at all. Really, it was really just to. I mean, you gave an excellent overview of the numerous discussions that are going on in these next few months. I just wanted to sort of emphasise a couple of points, really. I mean, first of all, on the Brazil conference, which Marilia has given us a great overview of. Things are still developing, of course. Time is short. It would be nice to see some progress on the government committee and things like that. But I know a lot's going on there. I mean, the genesis of this did come out of a meeting between Fadi Jahadi and the president of Brazil. But clearly, ICANN is very supportive of this conference and will take part like a lot of other organisations. But we're certainly don't think we've got any more. You know, our role is only one of like many other organisations. I mean, obviously, Fadi Jahadi was in at the start of it, and he will be one of the co-chairs for the conference. But I mean, that's the limit of our engagement, really, and we're participants along with everyone else, and we hope it will be a very constructive event. The other point on the ICANN panel, we're on this high level panel, which has been mentioned. This is the panel that Fadi Jahadi set up. It's a panel that several of us are involved in, and are represented on it. And the panel is going to, well, hopefully produce a paper, an input in terms of the sort of future ecosystem for internet governance, and that paper will hopefully be an input for the Brazil conference. But then after that, the panel will meet again. The panel's got two more meetings, one at the end of February, and then one at the beginning of May. And the panel, the idea is that it'll produce a final paper that will be, to an extent, determined or educated by the outcome of the conference in Brazil. So I just wanted to sort of clarify that. And meanwhile, of course, ICANN continues with its normal sort of meeting pattern. The next ICANN meeting, open to everyone, of course, is in Singapore at the end of March, March the 24th in Singapore, and then the next ICANN meeting is in London in June, towards the end of June. So, and of course, ICANN meetings are, well, as I said, open to anyone, all stakeholders, well, a variety of stakeholders come to the ICANN meetings. Anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Nigel, very, very useful. I hope that the whole myriad of events that are taking place in the next period are not confusing, and that every one of you will find a way through it. The most we can help will do. Feel free to post the questions in the chat window. For the moment, I have a couple of comments which I will read because the video is going to be posted. The reports is going to be posted later on the website. So for the sake of not missing any of the comments, when we mentioned security and the Obama speech, Jovan emphasized that the U.S. security and intelligence are also indicated that cybersecurity as the biggest security threat for the USA, higher than terrorism for the second year. So it seems that cybersecurity is going to be more and more on the agenda, we already had some developments late December about the extension of the Wassenaar agreement on the proliferation of the cyber arms, cyber weapons in a way, even though it's mostly focused on the technologies like deep packet inspection and so on, which might be used for surveillance, but it was not that much extended to the tricky parts of cyber weapons, which is the codes, the viruses, the botnet setup, and all these other tools which are really hard to get into, simply because they originate from cybercrime, from a black market of cybercrime around the world, and it's not really about the trade and control of trade as much. So that's going to be a challenge, how to focus on that without further increasing the militarization of cyberspace, but going more into fight against cybercrime and that way fighting against cyber weapons. Petru, when we mentioned a couple of times the ecosystem, Petru said Diplo embraced the notion of ecosystem. After all, am I part of the ecosystem or just one outsider who pollutes it? Excellent question. The ecosystem, when it comes to internet governance, was not even that new. ISO used it for quite a while, explaining, and they have a good document on internet governance ecosystem, or internet ecosystem, if I'm not wrong, which also shows the plethora of actors and their links. But seems like, yes, politically, ecosystem is coming more into focus, and it's not only Diplo embrace it, but rather copying or referring to what the other four are doing. For instance, the NetMundial meeting and the icon and so on. With regards to that, Jovan said ecosystem was borrowed from climate change and environmental field. Ecosystem tries to convey the following characteristics of digital politics: diversity, adaptability, and scalability. It is an interesting analogy with nature. Internet governance equals nature. Like with the analogies, it has commonalities but also differences. And he mentioned that Petru and, well, all of you are most welcome to the ecosystem, at least as for what Diplo is concerned. But I'm not sure about the others. Vera made a good point that, or clarification, that WSIS plus 10 high-level event. We mentioned the ITU preparations for that event. We didn't mention that event particularly yet. But WSIS plus 10 high-level event was supposed to take place in April in Sharm el-Sheikh. Because of the situation in Egypt, it's probably going to be postponed and moved. We know Jovan mentioned that the ITU development event, which was also supposed to be in Sharm, has been moved to Dubai for the beginning of May, if I'm not wrong. So it is possible there are some discussions that a WSIS plus 10 high-level event would take place also beginning of May in Dubai, but this is, as far as I know, not certain yet. If anyone has any information, it would be great to hear. Discussions on, let me go through the chat what we have now. Okay, so Petru sent a question to Nigel, basically being so modest about ICANN's role in part of a strategy or undisputed reality. I would leave that to Nigel to comment to chat as well. But ICANN's role is definitely quite prominent, whether only on the level of initiatives and initiating things like the Brazil meeting in OneNet and a high-level panel, or like hands-off or hands-on, where like this high-level panel where ICANN is basically and Father is basically in a way steering it, driving it to be effective. So in that sense, yes, ICANN is very prominent, and of course the ICANN's regular meetings as well. One of the discussions that we could see emerging again on OneNet list and on governance list, those are the discussion lists where communities discuss internet governance challenges, are again about the root zone and the internationalization of ICANN. I think this is going to be one of the hot topics of this year as well, whether, if, and how ICANN, and specifically the IANA contract, the IANA function, which deals with the root zone, and the IP addresses is going to be detached from US government and may be attached to a more global, even a UN framework or somewhere in between, a political solution for that. Victoria says, congratulations for a very useful initiative. We appreciate very much and encourage more colleagues to join. Thank you, Victoria. If it was helpful, we are really glad. Petru said, thanks, but I heard Jovan some minutes ago saying that ecosystem doesn't fly. No birds in it, I assume. As always, consensus humor, Petru. This is why I asked the question. I might refer it back to Jovan at the end, but he says, even as polluter, you are part of ecosystem. Ecosystem is generous and tolerant. Okay, Victoria, message from Jovan. Victoria, next time we'll have chance to see each other at the March meeting at the GIP premises in World Meteorological Organization building. Again, repeating the invitation for all of you that are in Geneva to join in vivo next time as well. If you can't, then webinar will be there, of course, as another option. Vera confirms versus plus 10 high-level event is officially still in charm, just later this year, but it's not, yeah, well, it is possible that changes will occur. Some of the links to the Net Mundial website do not work. Marilia, later on, or even in this chat, if you know the correct links, you can further add, but you confirm as well. Petro's comment on sounds like ICANN is a benevolent hegemon. I will leave Nigel and you, Petro, to go on with the discussion. It's going to be interesting, and then maybe feed into our next webinar. Jovan invited all of you from Geneva who are new to IG to let us know if we were too technical in explanation, if we went too much into acronyms, did not explain some of the concepts as we might have. So any suggestions for improvements are most welcome, of course, for the next webinar. Yes, Victoria, join us. Any other questions from the floor about any of the initiatives? I remind you that we will post the recording of this webinar to our website in a couple of days. So you might, and also we'll post the PowerPoint, which is not too rich, but it contains the main elements, so you can remind. So you're free to invite others to review and join us for the next webinar. If there are no other questions, and I see you're quite a chat, even though we have had quite some, I might maybe invite Jovan once again to, since he opened the webinar, to also close it this time. Next time we'll see, and maybe some final remarks. Jovan, the floor and the closing is yours if you wish. Jovan disappeared again.
Okay. Oh, here I am.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, Jovan, you can go ahead.
There is some problem with video, but it's better if we keep you. Well, oh, there is a change. If you keep you with your new style and new moustache, and just a quick sum up. That was the start of our Geneva Internet briefings. We are looking forward for the next one on the 4th of March at our new premises, which will be some sort of housewarming party for our friends here in Geneva. And if you have still some time during your break, go outside. There is some sun in Geneva, not very frequent these days. Therefore, enjoy sunny afternoon, which we may have today. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your questions, and looking forward to seeing you soon at our new premises and in the next Geneva briefing. Bye for now.